Welcome to Dukevember, my first in a series of John Wayne reviews for the month of November. I'd like to start with Rio Bravo, a movie that, if you're familiar with the works of John Carpenter, you can look in this movie and see how influential it was for him. He he calls this one of his favorite movies of all time. The plot's simple. A sheriff and his deputies need to keep a prisoner in prison until the marshal gets there to take him to court. Meanwhile, the prisoner's brother keeps funneling criminals in town to take out the sheriff and his deputies and free the brother. Although John Wayne is the star, he by far does not have the best role. That hands down goes to Dean Martin, who plays a former deputy who gets back into the game to help the sheriff after Joe Burdett shot a man. And because of a bad incident with a girl, he's been a hopeless alcoholic for years. And while Dean Martin's trying to deal with keeping them alive and doing his job as a deputy, he's recovering from his alcoholism. It's real. The story is really a redemption story about Dean Martin's character, Dude, and he plays it flawlessly. There's a lot of great moments. My favorite is the moment of his redemption. I'm not going to say much because I don't want to spoil things, but there will be spoilers. Where he's about to leave and he's going to have a drink before, and he starts to hear the music. Burdett's brothers having them play the Degüello, which is the Cutthroat song that was Santa Anta played at the Alamo, and when he hears it, he goes from being scared and shaking to straight, and he pours the alcohol back in the glass without spilling a drop. And it's a phenomenal piece of acting. Best role in the movie. The John Wayne's the sheriff. The other deputy is Walter Brennan, who plays this great surly old man who has just a lot of great comedic lines in the films and is just a lovable character. Like towards the end, there's a part where he comes to help them in the final gunfight, and John Wayne goes to get him from the wagon because Ricky Nelson, who becomes a deputy later but is there from the beginning, points out, "Hey, Chance, there's dynamite in that wagon." And he calls Stumpy, "Get over here." "What you talking about? I got me a good view here." "Yeah, you got a good view, all right. There's dynamite in that wagon." "Well, jumpin' Jehoshaphat, how come nobody don't tell me nothing?" And then he leaves and grabs a case of dynamite, and they're throwing it at the house that the gang's held up in. And John Wayne's like, "Throw it further." "Well, for crying out loud, nobody appreciates me. What would you do if I wasn't here to throw them for you?" "I'd throw them myself." Just great lines. Ricky Nelson comes in on a caravan that's run by a friend of John Wayne, played by Ward Bond, who you would recognize if you see John Wayne films. He's been in a lot of them. Ultimately, Ward Bond gets killed trying to help John Wayne, and later on, when initially at this point, John Wayne doesn't want Ricky Nelson's help because he's like, "Hey, you had your chance to help before your boss got killed. If you were as good as you say you are, you wouldn't have let your boss get killed." But eventually, Ricky Nelson has to aid John Wayne, and John Wayne points out, "You're in now, like it or not, and don't tell me you didn't think about it before you helped me." In the four of them, when they're all together, they make a great group. The actors have great chemistry. My favorite part in the movie is when Ricky Nelson, Dean Martin, and Walter Brennan playing Stumpy are making music together. It starts simply with Dean Martin singing, and then Ricky Nelson starts playing the guitar and singing, and then Stumpy takes his harmonica, and it goes from one song to another. And it's just this great moment where you can tell they're not really acting as much as they're just having fun. John Wayne's just, you can tell he's just enjoying the performance standing there. And it's a great scene because that scene is done after a pretty tense dramatic scene, so it was a great way to lighten the movie. Now, as I said, if you're a John Carpenter fan, this movie was hugely influential to him, and you can see where, even a lot of ways, how the camera work influenced him and how he would go use the camera. In fact, he claimed Assault on Precinct 13 is a remake of this film, and Howard Hawks basically even went on to more or less remake it with Rio Bravo and Rio Lobo. It's a wonderful story with a lot of options about a group of heroes defending themselves against an external force of evil, whatever that may be. And it's done to perfection in this. One of my other favorite characters is Carlos, the Mexican guy that owns the inn in town. The character is a little stereotypical at times, but he's still an inn owner, and he's a good character, and he's one of the ones towards the end that he's the one that comes in with a gun and ammo and basically telling John Wayne's character, you like it or not, you're going to get help from me. One of my favorite things about this movie is that John Wayne does not want help from the local populace because he doesn't want well-meaning amateurs that'll probably get themselves and someone else killed. It's his job to protect the people, and that's what he's going to do. But there are points in this film where, like it or not, he gets help from them. This film was partially done as a response to the movie High Noon, where the sheriff was going around asking people for help, and his wife saves him by shooting the villain in the back at the end of the day. And the fact that they felt that there was communist propaganda in that film. That's just an interesting story, but Rio Bravo is just, it's one of John Wayne's best films, hands down. And an interesting side note, the hat John Wayne wears in this movie, he wore it in several films, and by the point of this film, it had gotten old and worn down to the point where he had to retire it after the movie. Ricky Nelson is pretty good in this film. And it's funny, back then when you had seen a musician in a film, it didn't always mean they were bad. Now, when you look at a film and see, oh, with a major role by such and such musician, you just know it's going to be a bad performance. Back then, it wasn't the deal. We had one great and one good performance by Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson, respectively. And just every single character around the principals is just really good, too. Angie Dickinson playing this character Feathers, who had a potential warrant on her because of her then thieving husband. The bar owner and his wife. Even the small characters just put a lot of personality in this. Like I said, I know I've been scarce on the plot, but it's a film I really want you to see and experience for yourself. Especially if you're a fan of classic westerns, or just if you're a huge John Carpenter fan, you might want to check out one of his biggest influences, and you can see you can see elements Carpenter would incorporate into his filmmaking style in this film, Rio Bravo. Again, I'm going to have to go with the highest recommend. I know I give that one a lot, but like I've said before, the whole point of this channel, I'm not one of those people that reviews bad movies. Every now and then, I'll review a bad movie if I just feel there's something I want to say on it, or if it's one I seen in the theater. But other than that, as you know, it's movies I like. So, Rio Bravo, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Next film is either going to be The Shootist or True Grit. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, as I just said. Over and out.